The journey from pro footballer to the head of a $42 million cross-agency effort supporting Chicagoans most vulnerable to gun violence isn't a linear or terribly logical one, but a journey fueled by unabiding passion and a deeply rooted commitment to making the world a better place for those who have been historically, systemically, and intentionally excluded from resources, exposure, and opportunity. Join me and former NFL player and current executive director of Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, Vaughn Bryant, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Vaughn Bryant, my friend, It is very, very nice to sit here and have this conversation. You and I have had many conversations. We have had conversations, this will give people the wrong impression about what I've been doing, but we've had conversations in the gym many moons ago, for me, many pounds ago. But it's nice to have you sitting here. Let's start at the beginning. We have some similarities. And one of them is that we're both from Detroit. I think that's where the similarities sort of end. And we both currently live here. But let's fill in the blanks. You were born at Detroit St. Joseph's Hospital, 8:27 in the evening on what I assume is a cool March 20th, 1972.
First day of spring.
How about that? That's something. Tell me about the woman and man who created you.
So the woman, her name is Patricia Green, went to Pershing High School. You know, somebody who worked for the state of Michigan. But I would say at heart, she was a creator. She spent basically the last 15 years writing music, writing poems. She's written 3 books. You know, she's definitely, I think if she could start her life over, she would be in the arts in some way. And my father, an entrepreneur at heart. I remember in the 70s him passing out flyers to discos. My uncle and one of his best friends were the DJs, and another friend helped him move the crates. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of vinyl in my family room, playing a lot of music and, you know, really building my own music catalog. So my father was a police officer, Detroit police officer, and, you know, exposed me to sports as a young boy.
And you are the second of 5 siblings.
Correct.
Older sister? Brothers?
3 younger brothers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about your father. One of the pivotal moments when you and I were talking, and it was clear as we were talking, you were 23, your father was 47, Detroit police officer, OG serial entrepreneur. Your father at 47 died of a heart attack.
Correct.
How did that impact you at 23, and how does that continue to impact you today?
One thing is I believe his heart attack was stress-induced, so I think it really helped me live the mantra that, you know, is kind of popular today, to protect your peace. It also sort of made me double down on my commitment to my health. The way 23? I eat at 23, the way I eat, the way I exercise on a regular basis. I just want to be healthy and I want to live a long life, and that was one of the big things. And I think the other thing is time is short, and you never know when you know, your life could be ended. And it made me, you know, think about the importance of resolution in my relationships. Both personally and professionally, and just, you know, trying to live that on a daily basis.
And speaking of resolution, it's never enough, certainly at 23. But I would imagine with a parent at 70, it would still not be enough time.
Yeah, absolutely,
you know,
100%.
What was your relationship with your father? Are there parts of him that you feel as you're crossing into 50s that you go, that's him?
I think my desire to be a provider, I think I get from him. I am, I would say, a social entrepreneur, so definitely creative problem solver. And then, you know, he had a sense of humor, he loved music. I think the thing I miss most is the friendship we could have had, at that part of my life. If he was still around, I imagine the things we would do and talk about today. But yeah, I think, definitely love of sports. He was a big boxing fan. I think he exposed me to that. And, even every time I watch a fight, like there's things I do, kind of like moving my shoulders with the boxers. Like he used to do that. I used to watch him do that. And, I do that today. So definitely fond memories for sure.
And you talked about family is an important thing for you. Who is Zaya?
Zaya's my daughter. She just turned 19. She's a freshman at Spelman. She's 22 graduate of Whitney Young High School. She's a dancer. She's a singer. Very, very smart young lady. When she was growing up, I used to tell people, you obviously you love your kids, but I was like, I like my daughter. Like I can hang out with my daughter. So, just pride personified.
Nice.
Yeah.
And tell me about your relationship with Zaya's mother.
I think we've been successful co-parents. We had rocky years at the very beginning, but by the time Zaya was 2, I think she was committed to the relationship I had with Zaya. I always tell people I couldn't have the relationship I have with my daughter without her mom enabling that. Like, the women are the gatekeepers and, as the mothers, and that's fine. And I think, we as fathers have to respect them, respect that, and be willing to do everything that comes with parenting. So that means if I happen to be flying in town and she has a doctor's appointment, then that's what we're doing on that visit. Like I wasn't the fun dad. I was the dad that was willing to do anything her mom would do as a parent, because that's the type of thing that builds trust in the mother to know, okay, I can put her in his hands and anything, that needs to be taken care of is going to be taken care of. And I think it's our responsibility as a non-custodial parent to earn that trust so that, you can get the freedom to build your relationship on your own.
But you did, yes, and you're bearing that relationship, and the work you put into it is bearing fruit. But part of why you currently live in Chicago was for your unmitigated desire from Zaya's birth to move and be wherever you needed to be to show her and her mom, because that trust is important, that you were not going to be tried by.
Yeah, so when Zaya was 6 months old, she moved her from California to Chicago. So once a month, I was flying from California to Chicago to see her. She moved to Boston, I moved to New York. I saw her a week and an additional weekend every month. And then after a year, she moved back to Chicago. So for 3 straight years, I flew to Chicago twice a month. My thing was, when my daughter is 18 and she goes off to college, I want her to know that I did everything I could to be a part of her life. And I think that's the type of thing that creates security in people, knowing that they have parents that love them no matter what. And, we'll see now that she's out of the house.
We'll see what
I
we
have
see.
to trust my work,
You do. Yes, you do. We're going to come back to Zaya, but let me move in what is always too little time. You are from Detroit. You graduated from Orchard Lake High School, which is in an affluent, very affluent suburb, Detroit suburb, in 1990.
Yep.
And you went on scholarship, football scholarship, to Stanford University, where you graduated in 1994. Your senior year, something happened involving your youngest brother, Jason, who at the time I believe was 15.
So it was going into my junior year, the summer going into my junior year, and he was 15. Yeah.
Let me jump in.
Yep.
And you were a football star. I'm going to say it so you don't have to. I remember what it was like junior year for me at U of M. I couldn't. So when you shared this with me, so you're there with the pressures, and we talked about this. College football, especially for a Pac-10 or Big Ten team, it might as well be pro. It's the similar pressures. I've seen those men and women to some degree on the campus at U of M, even back in my day. So your youngest brother, Jason's 15. You were a junior, living the football dream with all the pressures that come with it. And what happened?
So the summer going into my junior year, I went home and I basically asked my parents to go for a ride, and asked them to let him come live with me. Mostly because he wasn't necessarily a troublemaking kid, but I knew that the type of attention he needed was going to come better from me than it was my parents at the time. My mom and dad were divorced, and my dad was remarried, and I just don't think the setup was conducive for him given the challenges he had. Like, my brother is 6'5". I think you've seen pictures of him. He was could have been a good athlete, a basketball player, baseball player, but he was ineligible. And I just knew that, given the exposure I had at Stanford and the environment, that it would just be a better situation. So I asked them if I could take him, and they agreed, and I became his legal guardian.
And he was 15, and how old were you?
21.
Okay, so we're saying
20. I was
Okay.
20. Yeah.
I don't know that it matters. That is a Herculean commitment at a time that we are conditioned to be selfish and think about and experiment and try our own things. And I can't imagine a scenario where I am a college major university football player to take on that accountability. So I just want to mark that. You graduated from Stanford in '94. You immediately went into the draft. Let me see how much I know about football. Let me try. You went to the draft. You were drafted. You went to the Detroit Lions.
Correct.
You played as a starter cornerback?
Right, but I didn't start for the Lions. I started at Stanford. I actually was drafted in the 4th round by the Lions, but cut after training camp by the Lions.
No, I don't believe that. And I don't accept it.
Yeah.
So you're at this level, though. It is sports. Every whim is taken care of. It is a place where I would imagine if you have a propensity, you can be very self-involved. You can be, I would imagine, much like celebrity, and I've seen that world more closely, where it is yes to everything. What do you need? It's all about you, because ultimately you're the moneymaker. So it feels like love, but you are a commodity that is being protected at all costs, including keeping things out of your space. But you decided in college, I'm going to ask my parents at age 20 to give me custody of my brother. Okay. And then while you were playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, you said, hey, why not audit a college-level family counseling course? Is that correct?
It was a graduate level, yes.
Okay. What? Why? Okay. I mean, if you're going to tell the truth. Tell me, because again, there are patterns, and I'm always looking at conversations for patterns. What was it? Because I have to imagine playing for the Eagles in whatever role, in whatever position, it's a full time.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I obviously, because I had gotten cut by the Lions, I knew that my career could be over at any time. And
so you were aware of your professional mortality.
Absolutely, and I knew that whatever I did in my career, it was gonna have some kind of impact on the Black family. And so,
how early did you know that?
In college, my sophomore year, I just remember having conversations with different classmates about the world, and I just kind of had that conviction that I felt like the stronger our Black family is, the stronger our Black community will be. That was kind of my notion at the time, and so that's what kind of led me in that direction, and it just gave me a sense of what it would be like to be a family therapist. And like I told you, the first day of that course, I felt like I could get in there and help that family that day. Like I knew, I was like, yes, I'm gonna do this. Yes, absolutely.
So let's fast forward just a bit, and then it'll bring us back full circle, I think. What year did your football career end?
Officially 1996. That summer, I played a season with the San Jose SaberCats in arena football. And that was my last season. That season, it was over, let's say, August of '96, and then I moved to Atlanta in September '96.
Tell me, again, the high level, the equipment, the resources, the things that I see just watching television, what sports stars and celebrities, no matter where you are in that world, it's different. And then you lead by your design or being assisted out. How do you go back to civilian life? Is that a transition that's as difficult as I think?
It's difficult, not necessarily because of the world that you're sort of re-entering as much as sort of getting over the world that you came from. So, I played my first season of organized football at the age of 9. So football had been, or some sport had been a part of my life probably since I was 7 years old. And so having that end is kind of like, your wife leaves and never calls again with no explanation. So it's tough. And it was, I went through a depression. And, the one thing I say is like, I'm kind of part of the privilege. I went to Stanford because I was trying to prepare myself. But even having been prepared, it's still a tough reality to actually have to follow through with that plan B, So it was tough, but a good friend of mine named Nelda, she used to sort of callously but lovingly say, okay, now you can go do something positive with your life.
Oh, okay, Nelda.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
There's nothing like friendship.
Exactly.
There's
exactly.
nothing
Yep,
like it.
Yep.
And in her own slightly callous way, Nelda, that's
Yeah,
the
she was
truth.
right.
Yeah.
She was right because she knew. I mean, we took a lot of classes together. She was one of my closest friends, and she knew that I would be a positive contributor.
She knew you at your core.
For sure.
I'm going to fast forward a bit. You joined the Chicago Park District after working on the Violence Prevention Initiative as a deputy officer at CPS. And one of your primary responsibilities lives with us to this day, and that was the creation of the Safe Passage. And that was the community effort to ensure that students in what was an increasingly more violent community were getting to and from school safely.
Yep.
And having worked in nonprofit, I know just how important that is. The journey from home to school, we take certain things for granted, some of us, but that crossing through territories, crossing through, it is, and then we wonder why when the child gets to school hungry and has already fought for their life in so many ways. So that was an important thing. You are currently the executive director of Metropolitan Peace Initiatives. Again, I see themes, MPI, which is a division of the gargantuan Metropolitan Family Services. Tell me about your work at that organization and tell me how you got there.
So our work is really to serve the folks who are most vulnerable to gun violence, either being a shooter or be a victim of violent crime. And we're really looking for people who are influencing shooting and then potentially doing the shooting, and recruiting them with guys and gals who come from the same neighborhoods, come from potentially the same street organizations, to get them to turn their lives around. So at my organization, we support the local organizations that do that work on a daily basis. And they hire outreach workers, case managers, victim advocates. They deliver events in the neighborhoods 3 nights a week, in the summertime, once a month, fall, winter, spring, so that we can sort of bring positive activities to those neighborhoods that are most vulnerable to crime and violence. And then we administer what is called the Metropolitan Peace Academy, where we train the outreach workers and the case managers so that there's a standard of practice across our network of providers. We've served over 41 different community-based organizations, either in outreach or in case management services. And we do that on behalf of the Illinois Department of Human Services now with some other organizations. So really trying to provide capacity building and technical assistance so that, we can sort of build what we call a civilian infrastructure for public safety in Chicago that works in a complementary fashion to the police. So they're obviously supposed to serve and protect and, hold people accountable. We're trying to get to people before they get to law enforcement to make sure that we, sort of hopefully put them on the straight and narrow, help them live dignified lives. So that's, in addition to that, we provide free behavioral health services, free civil legal aid services, workforce development. Like we pay for people to get their GED if they want it. So, we really want to take away any constraint to somebody living a dignified life.
How about us sticking the landing and doing something that is scalable and sustainable? What a novel approach. Good for you. Do you love the work?
Yeah, I love the work, and I think the most important thing for me is that I want to, be in God's will and do what He wants me to do on this earth. And I definitely think based on things I've prayed for, and what I said about, Black families back in the day. Like, I feel like, all of my work is on the South and West Side. So definitely have an impact on Black and brown families in the city of Chicago. It's the number one issue. I've prayed about working on things that are relevant and matter. And, I don't think there's anything that matters more than, not only gun violence, but the safety and healing of the people in our communities.
Speaking of things that matter, what is your greatest hope for Zaya?
Greatest hope for Zaya, again, just that she's doing what she's supposed to do on this earth. I mean, the way she got her name, I was actually at work one day just kind of contemplating, my role as a parent. And my first thought was that it's to facilitate her relationship with God and that she can figure out what God's will is for her life. And it kind of led me to the letter X, and we kind of solved for X in math. And then I was like, the Greek letter for X is Xi. I added an A and made it feminine. And then I told her mom, and her mom started looking in the Bible, and you see Mariah, Jeremiah, Nehemiah, that all end in IAH. So we made it XIAH. And then I later learned that IAH stands for of God. So it's kind of, defined by God is kind of that, and that's my hope for her. And, and I think, the other thing is just to make sure she is healthy, and that I just hope nothing catastrophically bad happens. But I just, I want her to be fulfilled and wake up every day knowing that she's doing what she's supposed to do.
And when I listen to you, and more importantly, look at you as you talk about it, I believe you to the core of your being, my brother.
Yeah, like talking about her is a little emotional, but
Listen, I'm going to tell you, this has been such a privilege sitting in this chair having these conversations. And I knew you, and I did not know all the layers. And I think that's a part of the human experience. When we see each other on the street, there are so many layers, which is why there's always room to give someone grace. You don't know what they've experienced, what they're going through, what they're dealing with in big and small ways. I could sit here and talk to Brother Vaughn all day, but I can't, apparently timing. But what we are going to do is come right back after this and have something called Three for the Road. In the meantime, I know that I have a feeling, hint, that you will be engaging in a larger capacity with CAN TV as we step into the new year. So that's exciting, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that as the time becomes correct. But for now, we'll be right back with Three for the Road.
How hard is it really to be the only woman in the office? On this week's show, we will celebrate women who have excelled in non-traditional careers and who have shattered the glass ceiling.
And is life stressing you out? In our For Your Health segment, we'll talk about the importance of stress management and self-care.
Real Talk with Suggestive Girlfriends airs Mondays at 7 p.m. on CAN TV 19 and streaming on cantv.org.
Brother Vaughn, we are going to take part in our final segment, and it is called, wait for it, Three for the Road.
Okay.
How this segment works, I'm going to ask you three questions.
Okay.
You're going to give me three answers.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Let's
I'm ready.
begin. If you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Probably somebody like Arthur Ashe would be somebody I would want to have dinner with, just to understand what he wanted to get accomplished, understand how he went about it, what was sort of his philosophy and thinking about, what he was trying to get accomplished, and, what he would do differently. But I think him being obviously a higher level athlete, but also clearly having some conviction about the world and about, the community that he came from. We are both part of the same fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. So I feel like I had, some things in common with him that would make for a fruitful dinner.
All right. Good start. Felt good? Ready for number two?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you have any regrets?
Yeah, I think there's been, things that I've done in my life. I haven't been perfect, clearly. And so, yeah, I think that, anytime you can take back a mistake you've made, you want to do that. And so while I think I've learned, and I think it's given me a level of empathy that is helpful, like some of the conversations I've had with my daughter just about, my past, I think would be helpful to her because I've been very, very candid, that it will help her. I know for sure as she navigates the world moving forward. So, just when you've impacted people's lives in negative ways, you just don't want to do that. And so, from that perspective, I would definitely say I could take back some things for sure.
I'm going to cheat just a little bit. I'm going to ask you a 2B. Because you're a man of faith as well. Your greatest sins or greatest mistakes in your lifetime, have you been able to forgive yourself fully?
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. One is I've never really been malicious. I think I've been unaware and selfish, at times. But I think whenever I've been made aware of, the error of my way or even the error of my thinking, I'm open to feedback. I think one of the best things about being an athlete, especially at a high level, is you're constantly being critiqued. So you have to be able to take feedback. You have to have a thick skin, and you can't take everything personal. And so from that perspective, I think, I understand, my human frailment, and I understand that God gives me grace every day, and it's just my job to come back the next day and try to make amends and do better moving forward. And so that's what I do.
All right, because I took that 2B. Question number 3, you got 30 seconds. One piece of advice 50-year-old Vaughn would have given or would give his 21-year-old self.
My 21-year-old self, that's a good question. I think some of the relationships, especially at Stanford, that I probably could have did a better job cultivating. I think I came from an environment that culturally I wasn't as comfortable at 21 as I am now, going from Detroit to Palo Alto and the type of people that were there. I just don't know that I had enough in common, enough to make conversation to cultivate some of those relationships. So I think just take more risk and be able to be uncomfortable at that stage in life, and be in spaces that, may be foreign, but, trust that I can, I'll adapt and I'll overcome and I'll still be able to, make good, from that effort. So, yeah.
And with that, I'm just, as you're talking, like, you don't have to answer. It feels like you've always had an old soul.
So my mom would tell you that from a young age, I just had a wisdom about me. So, I'm just quoting her. So,
Okay, I love that. I'm going to have to start doing that. Vaughn, brother, I could sit and talk with you. We've talked, but to be able to have this conversation and to be able to share these sort of conversations mean the world to me and to this organization. Our commitment to having conversations to engage, empower, inform, and activate. Vaughn will be continuing conversations here in forums like this and similar come January. We'll talk more about that in the weeks to come. We don't have months left. Let me leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of English cleric Sidney Smith. Life is to be fortified by many friendships. To love and be loved is the greatest happiness of existence. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night.